26 minutes past the hour. Thanks so much for being with us. Top of the morning to you. We're Miller and Moulton. This is Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton Twitch.tv channel. A reminder, Game 2 in the battle for Lord Stanley's Cup is tonight, 8 o'clock, NBCSN, by the way. But we'll have it for you right here, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. He's Ryan Ballengee. He is host of the 19th Hole Golf Show, and you can read his work at golfnewsnet.com, golfnewsnet.com. And, well, you can follow him on Twitter. Why don't you? Ryan Ballengee. Ryan, top of the morning to you. Thanks for your time. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me on.
We are pondering a poll question. More unpopular win. Patrick Reed at the Masters, Bryson DeChambeau at the U.S. Open. Man, do people not like this guy?
I mean, I think it would be Patrick Reed if you asked their peers. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely their peers. Golf fans, would it be the same? Because Captain America, even though he's just not a good person, Captain America, that part resonates with some golf fans. I don't know any golf fans that like DeChambeau.
I mean, I did see some defense of Bryson in my timeline as coming down the stretch yesterday. But yeah, I get that sentiment that a lot of golf fans aren't ready to embrace what Bryson's been doing the last few months, really last year plus. But I don't think they're ready to come around to it. And I don't know if they're ever going to come around to it. And in part, that's who Bryson is. And in part, that's what Bryson just did. So, some people are probably never going to come around to appreciating what he just accomplished.
And I don't know, I was with a guy who plays on the Latin Tour and another guy who's played in some tour events, and they were both wanting him to hit every shot out of bounds, and they both respect the hell out of his game. What is it in your eyes that just, because I get the fact that Bryson has been this way. I mean, here's how I play. Here's what I do. And everybody has told him for so long that it's wrong. So there's a lot of me that can defend him being a blankety blank, if you know what I mean, Ryan. But what is it you think about him that just rubs people the wrong way? Because it certainly does.
There is a chip on his shoulder, and I don't think he's the only pro who's like that. Bryson is like that. Brooks is like that. Brooks has 4 majors to his credit and still acts like he's playing on the Korn Ferry Tour. So, and some people love that. I think that Bryson's chip manifests itself as defending himself as he's a genius, and he hadn't gotten to genius level proof yet. Yeah, it hadn't happened in the lab yet, and now it finally has. But I think a lot of purists, a lot of people who watched golf for a long time, imagine golf being played a certain way, and Bryson doesn't play golf that way. I mean, his strategy is bang it as far as humanly possible. If it hits the fairway, cool. If it doesn't, I'm going to hit a wedge up to the green and probably have a birdie putt. And there's really not a whole lot you can do to stop me because I'm not going to make a whole lot of bogeys. And that style is tailor-made to every style of golf, but particularly a U.S. Open like this one at Winged Foot, where the USGA decided they're going to make the fairways super narrow and they're going to make them really hard to hit. And back in the old days, you had to be scared of that, and you would just bunt it down there as far as you reliably could. Well, Bryson doesn't have to do that. He doesn't care whether it lands in the fairway or not. He's down there 365. He's hitting a wedge, and it doesn't. And I think that ultimately bothers a lot of fans who want to try to see some of themselves playing golf in what the pros do. No one can see themselves in Bryson DeChambeau.
He's Ryan Ballengee, host of the 19th Hole Golf Show. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan Ballengee, and also read his work at golfnewsnet.com, golfnewsnet.com. Forget the fans, all right? And even forget a couple of sports talk show hosts in Southwest Florida. I don't think the network announcers are crazy about him either. And we have to start wondering, though, is he changing the sport? I mean, and if you really think about it, there hasn't been anybody since Tiger that's changed the sport. Is Bryson DeChambeau changing golf?
I think he is just a natural extension of where golf has been going for 20 years. And it starts with Tiger, right? Starts with Tiger and the solid core golf ball, the Pro V1 or the Bridgestone ball, which was really the first solid core ball. And that meant everybody was 15 yards longer without doing anything. And then they realized, wait, maybe I can get even longer with better equipment and better fitness. And I can just kind of reach farther and farther. And that this has kind of been that natural progression. But no one has ever blatantly said, yeah, we're hitting it farther. But how much farther can I hit it? What can I do within the rules of golf to absolutely maximize how far I can hit it as my one and only strategy? And I think that's what rubs touring pros. I think that's what rubs golf insider types the wrong way, because there's just this presumption that you're just going to kind of, I guess, play in the same sandbox as everybody else. But I don't think that all of a sudden we're going to see 17-year-old kids playing AJGA events, put on 45 pounds, and start swinging 48-inch drivers. I don't think that's going to happen. But if Bryson keeps winning like this, you have to start thinking in those terms, because how are you going to beat the guy? I mean, as we said earlier, he's taking bogey out of the equation. There aren't drop shots that he has to think about. The only thing he has to think about is birdies and eagles. And when you can think that way playing professional golf, it's a paradigm shift. It's a totally different world. And so I don't think there's going to be an immediate change, not like Tiger, right? Tiger's change was kind of easy to understand. Get in the gym. Bryson's change is kind of hard to understand. Drink 20 protein shakes a day and just swing out of your shoes. That's something that's really hard for golfers to wrap their minds around. But that's not to say that it can't become the norm within 5 or 10 years if he's crushing it like this.
Ryan, it seems difficult for most people who have followed sports to put on 40 pounds in that length of time with protein shakes. I think he's taking steroids. I've made no bones about it. I've never made bones. You don't do it any other way, in my opinion. I've watched other athletes in sports my whole life do this. We know why. The PGA is the worst testing organization in sports. No one tests positive for anything, and we all know that they do some things. We all know. And I'm not talking about the steroids. I'm talking about other things that they never get caught for or we never hear about. So do you think they're going to try to catch him? Because as David mentioned, the other golfers, I don't think, love it. The announcers don't love it. And I don't know how much the PGA loves this style of golf. You think they're going to start coming after it, whether he is or not? Koepka kind of said something. It's one thing for me to say something. How long before people inside the ropes, or those who cover it very close to the ropes, start, instead of hinting towards it, saying it?
It's a good question. I mean, I understand any kind of skepticism about it, because I lived through the steroid era of baseball.
Right.
It doesn't.
This is Brady Anderson hitting 50, quickly, and you go, what? Right? What?
Yeah, and I think that's something that golf will eventually have to confront, especially now that he's a U.S. Open champion, now that he's a major winner, and frankly, now that he's a threat every time to win, he tees it up. So, yeah, the PGA Tour's testing program, not that it's bad, but it's not very transparent. And just as a good example, by rule, they don't have to tell anybody if someone pops for a recreational drug.
Right.
If you get caught smoking weed or doing cocaine, they don't have to tell anybody. But if they pop doing a performance enhancing drug, then they do have to tell somebody. But how often do they test? When they test you? And you're also dealing with a guy in Bryson who, he may not be a genius, but he does think. And so if you're trying to come up with something, I don't want to put that out there on Bryson, but the whispers are going to come. They've come before. They're going to come again, and they're going to get louder because you're a major winner now. So I don't know how they test him more frequently without making it so obvious that they're targeting him. But I feel like there's going to be a lot more of this conversation.
Ryan, I will say I love the final group yesterday for a couple of reasons. First off, a couple of young guys, all right, which is always nice to see in any sport. But secondly, two very unique golfers. We've just spent, time talking about DeChambeau, but, Wolf swing. It's Jim Furyk looks at it and goes, dude, you got to work on that. And the fact that he's this good, I'm at 21, it's to me, the individualism of the two of them. on display in the final group yesterday, where so many of the golfers are cardboard cutouts and their swings are almost identical. I just marveled watching the two of them going, man, there's not a swing coach around that would teach either one of these guys how they're doing it.
Yeah, they're both very much self-made. I mean, Matt Wolf works with a guy named George Gankis, who is a kind of free spirit of golf instruction, and let Matt kind of swing his swing because of his baseball connected past. And I mean, Matt Wolf could have won this tournament yesterday.
Yeah.
Kind of got steamrolled a little bit on the back nine and never really recovered. And Bryson is a little bit more steely. But in two majors, Matt Wolf has finished T4 at second at 21.
Right.
So it portends some good things are going to happen for the guy eventually. I think he learned a lot from yesterday. I think he learned a lot from losing to Bryson earlier in the summer in Detroit, the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Got blown away in a similar fashion. Started out with the lead, got caught, didn't know what to do, couldn't answer, and then just got passed. He got that same thing happen to him yesterday. But he's going to figure it out. He's a smart kid. He was a little whiny after losing. I think he was upset about some breaks and things like that. And you could tell by the last 3 or 4 holes, he was almost completely out of gas. But he's going to figure out how to do this. And I do think it's really cool that, yeah, I mean, Wolf is basically a less optimized version of Bryson in terms of just banging as far as you can. But if you were going to try to root for one of the two players, I think pretty much every person that you surveyed other than Bryson was going to root for Matt Wolf. So I think he's likable. He shows emotion. He cares. I think that's going to be he's a superstar in the making, absolutely, in golf.
There's no doubt there. And I mean, the game is in a great spot. When you look at DeChambeau, Wolf, Schauffele, Finau, and Justin Thomas all in the top 10. I mean, these are all young guys that are getting it done, not to mention that you still got DJ that's playing at a high level. Rory had a nice tournament, which was really nice to see for a change. How much would the next Open at Winged Foot be different? Because it surely sounded as if the superintendent at Winged Foot took the USGA out behind the barn rather, after Thursday and scolded them and may have hit them a few times because he was embarrassed that 20 guys shot under par on Thursday. When we get the next Open at Winged Foot, we're never going to have a Thursday like that again, are we, Ryan?
I can't imagine. That drew a lot of criticism, and not just from the membership at Winged Foot that wants like 20 over par to win the U.S. Open. But a lot of golf fans wanted to see, and myself included. I mean, this is billed as Winged Foot. You're expecting pain and suffering from the first shot, and to have that kind of first round, and even for Matthew Wolf to be able to shoot 65, hitting just a couple fairways. I think that in part goes to show you how good the technology has come in just 14 years, where guys' games have changed, the equipment is better. There's really not a whole lot the USGA can do to stop people from just pummeling a golf course if they're long and hitting wedges. There's not much they can do. They can't make a golf course long enough. So that's part of the reality, is that by the time we get to 8 years from now, or whenever the next time Winged Foot hosts, there's not going to be a whole lot different unless the USGA says we need to kind of draw a line in the sand. We are going to roll back equipment. We're going to create limits on how much the ball can spin, how far it can go, how long your driver can be, all these kinds of measures they could take and have basically avoided for 20 years. Unless they do that, I don't think there's anything that they can do to stop guys from, if they're playing well enough, putting up the numbers that we saw this week.
Ryan, Jordan Spieth looks lost. He's not long enough to compete with the top players. He's certainly never been straight enough. And it doesn't seem as if he is content to play to his strengths. I mean, I think, I said when he was on his roll, he reminds me of Justin Leonard. Leonard had 2 really good years, and then really his game didn't transcend long term. He was always a good putter, but, he was just too short. And I kind of wonder, does Spieth need to realize, despite having 4 majors, really now who he is, that he's a crooked Kevin Kisner, and he needs to figure it out. He seems right now lost on the PGA Tour in 2020?
He's been in the wilderness for the better part of 3 years, almost 4 years.
Yeah, since he won the British. I mean, he hasn't done much.
Yeah, that's the last win. And honestly, that came out of nowhere. The season, throughout 2017 wasn't even very good. So that's a great analog to Justin Leonard. I think that, and he talked a little bit about this after missing the cut. He's just trying to go out there and play his game. The problem is his game isn't competitive right now. If you hit 49% of fairways week to week on the PGA Tour, what in the world are you doing with 25-yard fairways at Winged Foot? You have a prayer, especially hitting at only 290, 295 off the tee when Bryson is 80, 90, 100 yards past you. Like, that's kind of happens when I play a 25 handicap. That should not happen on the PGA Tour to a guy who's won multiple major championships. And so I think Jordan's kind of in this place where he has to decide whether he wants to continue to be Jordan Spieth, the guy that was the best golfer in the world in 2015 and part of 2016, or does he need to revolutionize himself, reinvent himself for the remainder of his career, change his swing, break it down, get faster, go farther, but still be the same guy that makes a whole lot of putts. I think a lot of people kind of knew this day has been coming because you could see how he won tournaments in his run, and a lot of it was just incredible putting from mid-range that everyone knew just could not be sustainable in the long term. And that's where we are now. So I guess you just have to make the tough decision if you're Spieth. Do you cut the cord, abandon the way that you've played golf that got you this far to set you up for hopefully a longer, meaningful career where you can still have a chance to win majors? That's a hard decision to make.
More strange, Ryan, watching the U.S. Open in September or watching Masters commercials during the U.S. Open in September?
The U.S. Open, I mean, I played my club championship over the weekend, and it kind of felt a lot, not conditions-wise like the U.S. Open, but just kind of the weather. It made some sense, I guess, and it did dry out in the end. They got one guy under par, so they got what they wanted from a U.S. Open in the fall. Even though we only had 144 players, it was all exempt, and it was really hard to finish every day. But having the Masters in November, I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, I know they're going to try to overseed because they want to do that, and it wants to look as green as it normally does in April. So I think the Masters is going to look like the Masters come November, but a commercial telling me to watch the Masters in November, that's really, really weird.
Ryan, thanks so much for your time. We hear you got your hands full.
The dog
All
one.
the best.
That's the dog that wants to go
No,
out?
I think it's a baby.
No, that's a
Yeah,
baby.
she just came by and said she wants to go outside.
All right.
All right. Well,
Did you win the club championship? That's all people are going to ask, and I'm going to have to text you later. So,
Oh man, no. I played against the number 1 or number 11 ranked junior amateur in the world. A guy who played multiple USAMs, guys who were playing D1 golf, and a former pro golfer. So I really did not stand a chance.
that's a tough field. That's a U.S. Open field at your club.
yeah, really. My goodness. Making the quarters seems like a good run. Ryan, thanks. All the best.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Ryan Ballengee, host of the 19th Hole Golf Show and also part of golfnewsnet.com, golfnewsnet.com. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Ballengee, Ballengee. Ryan Ballengee joining us here on Miller and Moulton. Today was the day when, coming up next. You like my poll question?
I do.
More unpopular win, Patrick Reed at the Masters, Bryson DeChambeau at the U.S. Open?